I forgave him. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was believing him when he said it would never happen again. And my third, most devastating mistake? Letting everyone convince me that checking up on him made me the villain. My name is Rachel Morrison, and this is the story of how I gave a cheater a second chance, spent 2 years being called controlling and insecure for trying to rebuild trust, and then discovered he never stopped betraying me. He just got better at hiding it. And when I finally found out the truth, I made damn sure he'd regret every lie he ever told. Let me take you back to the beginning of my nightmare. I discovered my husband David's affair on a random Thursday afternoon. I'd come home early from my teaching job with a migraine and found messages on his laptop that he'd carelessly left open. Explicit texts with a woman named Brooke from his office. Months of messages. I love yous. Plans to leave me. Complaints about our marriage. Photos I couldn't unsee. My world shattered in the time it took to scroll through that conversation. When David came home that night, I confronted him with shaking hands and a broken voice. And he cried. God, he cried like I'd never seen. He dropped to his knees, begged for forgiveness, swore it was a mistake, promised it meant nothing, said he'd do anything to fix this. I should have left right then, but I didn't. We had 2 kids, Emma who was 6 and Noah who was 4. We'd been married for 9 years. I'd built my entire adult life around this man, this family, this home. The thought of destroying everything terrified me more than the betrayal. So, I made a choice that would haunt me for the next 2 years. I decided to stay, to forgive, to try to rebuild what he'd destroyed. David seemed genuinely remorseful. He quit his job where Brooke worked, started therapy, gave me full access to his phone, his email, his location. He did everything right, said everything right, and slowly, painfully, I started to believe we might actually survive this. But here's what nobody tells you about staying after infidelity. You become the villain. Not him. You. Because suddenly every boundary you set, every question you ask, every moment you need reassurance becomes evidence that you're controlling, paranoid, and unable to move forward. David's family was the first to turn on me. His mother actually sat me down 3 months after I discovered the affair and told me, Rachel, you need to forgive and forget. David made a mistake, but he's trying. If you keep bringing it up, you're going to push him away. Forgive and forget. Like I was supposed to erase months of betrayal from my memory because it was convenient for everyone else. My own friends started pulling away too. They'd roll their eyes when I'd mention feeling anxious about David working late. They'd tell me I needed to get over it when I'd admit I still checked his phone sometimes. My best friend Lauren finally said to me over coffee, Rach, at some point you either trust him or you don't. This constant monitoring isn't healthy. You're becoming someone you're not. I remember sitting there thinking, who exactly am I supposed to be? The woman who pretends everything is fine? The woman who ignores her instincts? The woman who just accepts that her husband destroyed her ability to trust, and now she's the problem for struggling? David caught on quickly to how the narrative had shifted. 6 months after the affair, when I asked to see his phone because he'd been texting someone late at night, he sighed and said, Rachel, this is exactly what my therapist warned me about. You're never going to trust me again. Maybe we need to accept that you can't move past this. He made it sound like my trauma was my failure. Like his affair was something I needed to get over faster, work through better, handle more gracefully. And when I'd get upset, when I'd have bad days where the pain felt fresh, he'd accuse me of living in the past and refusing to heal. The gaslighting was subtle but constant. Every time I felt suspicious, he'd turn it around. Why were you looking through my receipts? That's invasive. Why did you call my office to check if I was really there? That's crazy behavior. Why are you tracking my location? I can't live like this. And everyone around me agreed with him. His friends, my friends, our families, even our marriage counselor suggested I was holding on to resentment and preventing reconciliation. So I tried harder. I stopped checking. I stopped asking questions. I swallowed my anxiety and forced myself to trust the man who'd proven he wasn't trustworthy. For 2 years, I played the perfect forgiving wife. I smiled when he said he was working late. I believed him when he said he was at the gym. I ignored the sick feeling in my stomach when he'd come home smelling like unfamiliar perfume and claim it was from someone at work. I convinced myself I was healing, that we were stronger, that surviving his betrayal had somehow made our marriage better. David seemed happy. The kids were happy. Everyone told me how proud they were of me for choosing my family. And I tried so hard to believe that I'd made the right choice. If you're still watching this, and I really need you to be because this story gets so much worse before it gets better, go ahead and hit that like button. What I'm about to tell you will make your blood boil. Then came the night that destroyed everything I'd rebuilt. It was our wedding anniversary, 11 years. David had made reservations at an expensive restaurant, bought me flowers, told me how grateful he was that I'd given him another chance. We had a beautiful dinner. He held my hand across the table. He told me I was the love of his life. And I believed him. I actually believed that we'd survive the worst and come out stronger. We came home, put the kids to bed, and I fell asleep feeling hopeful for the first time in 2 years. I woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. David's phone was on the nightstand, lighting up with notifications. I wouldn't have looked. I'd trained myself not to look, but one message preview caught my eye before I could turn away. It was from someone named Jason, but the message said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Last night was amazing." My heart stopped. I picked up the phone with trembling hands. No password. He'd removed it 2 years ago as proof of his commitment to transparency. And what I found destroyed me in ways the first affair never could. Messages with Brooke. The same Brooke from 2 years ago. The affair had never ended. Not when he quit his job. Not when he cried and begged. Not during 2 years of therapy and promises and my endless, stupid forgiveness. They'd just gotten more careful. She'd changed her name in his phone to Jason to avoid suspicion. They'd moved their communication to a messaging app that deleted conversations. And the messages I found, the ones that survived, showed everything. David had been seeing her the entire time I'd been healing. Every late night at work, every gym session, every business trip, he'd been with her. But it was worse than just the continued affair. The messages showed him laughing about me, mocking me for believing him, bragging to Brooke about how easy it was to manipulate me. In one message from 6 months ago, he wrote, "Rachel actually apologized today for being controlling when she asked where I was going. 2 years, and she still blames herself. This is almost too easy." I sat on our bathroom floor reading message after message, watching 2 years of my life revealed as a complete lie. But the absolute worst part, the part that made me physically sick, was a conversation from our anniversary. While I'd been getting ready for dinner, believing we were celebrating our survival, David had texted Brooke, "Anniversary dinner with the wife. Putting on the loving husband act. Should be painful, but at least I get a good meal out of it. See you Friday." And Brooke had responded with laughing emojis. I had forgiven him. I had fought for our marriage. I had endured being called controlling and paranoid and bitter. I had rebuilt my trust from ashes. And the entire time he was mocking me for it, using my forgiveness as a shield to continue doing exactly what he'd promised to stop. I don't remember how long I sat there. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. But eventually something inside me broke. Not my heart, that was already broken. My fear. My people-pleasing. My desperate need to keep everyone happy. All of it shattered, and what rose from those pieces was someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold. Someone calculating. Someone done being the fool. I didn't confront him that night. Didn't wake him up screaming. Didn't throw his phone at his sleeping face, though God knows I wanted to. Instead, I took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every deleted photo I could recover. Every piece of evidence showing that he'd spent 2 years lying to me, his therapist, his family, everyone. Then I put his phone back exactly where it was and went downstairs. I spent the rest of that night planning. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it wasn't going to be quiet. It wasn't going to be dignified. It was going to be exactly the kind of public, devastating exposure that David deserved. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you would have done, because the revenge I orchestrated was so perfectly brutal that David's own mother ended up apologizing to me. The next morning, David left for work like nothing was wrong, kissed me goodbye, told me again how special our anniversary dinner was. I smiled and told him I loved him too. Then the second his car left the driveway, I got to work. I called my lawyer and filed for divorce. Not quietly. I requested an emergency hearing and attached every screenshot as evidence of ongoing fraud and emotional abuse. I called David's new job, the one he'd gotten after leaving to save our marriage, and informed HR that he was having an affair with Brooke, who apparently also worked there. Turns out he'd helped her get hired 6 months after he started. They fired him within 2 hours. But I wasn't done. I posted everything on social media. Every message, every lie, every cruel thing he'd said about me while I was trying to heal. I tagged his family, my family, our friends, everyone who'd told me to trust him, to move on, to stop being controlling. I wrote one caption. 2 years ago, I forgave my husband's affair. 2 years I spent being called controlling for trying to rebuild trust. Last night, I discovered he never stopped cheating. He just got better at lying. And everyone who told me to trust him enabled this abuse. My phone exploded. Messages poured in from everywhere. David's mother called me crying, apologizing, saying she'd failed me. Lauren, my best friend who'd called me paranoid, showed up at my door sobbing. Even our marriage counselor sent an email admitting she'd misread the situation. But the most satisfying response came from David himself. He called me 15 times before I answered. When I finally picked up, he was frantic. "Rachel, why would you do this? You've destroyed my reputation. I lost my job. My family won't talk to me. We could have handled this privately." I laughed. Actually laughed. And I said something I'd been holding in for 2 years. "You destroyed my mental health for 2 years. You made me question my sanity. You let everyone call me crazy while you were lying the entire time. You used my forgiveness as a weapon. And now the world knows exactly who you are. This isn't revenge, David. This is consequences." The divorce was finalized in record time. The judge saw the evidence and was visibly disgusted. She awarded me full custody, the house, 75% of our assets, and maximum child support. She told David in court, "You didn't just cheat on your wife. You psychologically abused her by exploiting her trust while continuing the betrayal. You made her believe she was the problem when you were the perpetrator. That's not infidelity. That's cruelty." David tried to fight it, but public opinion had already convicted him. No lawyer wanted to represent the guy who'd publicly humiliated his wife for 2 years. Brooke lost her job too. Her husband found out about the affair through my posts and divorced her immediately. She tried to reach out to me once, claiming David had manipulated her too. I blocked her. I had no sympathy left. Not for her. Not for him. Not for anyone who'd chosen to believe his lies over my instincts. Today, 3 years later, I'm teaching at a new school in a different state. My kids are thriving. I bought a house with my settlement. I'm dating someone who treats me with respect and would never dream of making me feel crazy for having boundaries. And most importantly, I trust myself again. I'll never ignore my gut to please others. I'll never accept blame for someone else's cruelty. And I'll never forgive betrayal at the expense of my sanity. David? He moved back in with his mother. Lost custody battles repeatedly because the kids didn't want to spend time with him. His reputation never recovered. Nobody wants to hire or date the guy who's known for psychologically torturing his wife for 2 years. Last I heard through mutual friends, he's lonely, broke, and bitter. He wanted me to forgive and forget, so he could have his cake and eat it too. Instead, I forgave once, remembered everything, and made sure the entire world knew what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. My name is Rachel Morrison. I forgave a cheater because everyone told me it was the right thing to do. I was called controlling and paranoid for struggling to trust. And when I finally discovered he'd never stopped betraying me, I made sure everyone who enabled his abuse knew they'd failed me. This is what happens when you give someone a second chance, and they waste it. This is what happens when you punish loyalty with lies. And this is what happens when the woman you underestimated decides she's done protecting your reputation at the expense of her truth.